The legacy of the Berger Health System began in 1927 when Frank Berger donated the lands and funds to start the hospital. From that humble beginning, Berger has grown into a comprehensive health system, providing quality care for Pickaway County. Today, Berger has over 650 employees, 100 volunteers, and more than 200 physicians on the active medical staff. Berger has survived and thrived through good times and bad, including massive national changes. But one of the constants throughout our history has been the quality physicians providing care to our patients.
I think it's very important to remember the contributions of our predecessors at Berger. I have been with the organization about 5 years and have been touched on a daily basis with the stories that I've heard about the medical staff at Berger and the care that they provided to this wonderful community over many decades.
Healthcare was different, and Berger was a different place when Dr. Jasper Hedges started at Berger in 1946.
I started at Berger in 46, after I was in the service. After my first 2 weeks in practice, I took my income to the bank. It was $12. Well, now you do a lot more referral and you specialize a lot more. Back in those days, I don't know, I was a family doctor, but as a family doctor, I did orthopedics, I did anesthesia, I did internal medicine, I did obstetrics, I did gynecology, did the whole gamut of medicine.
For some of our physicians, it was a family affair and homegrown.
Came back here in 1972 and started practice with my father, and retired from the office practice in 2000. Growing up here, Circleville is a great place to grow up, much more relaxed than it is now. I really enjoyed coming back to town and practicing. We still had the old hospital then that was built in the 1930s, had a tile roof on it, and had a lot of fun in there. My favorite memories probably would be part of being involved in the building of the new hospital in 3 different phases. And I was really enjoyed all that. I was instrumental in establishing the first intensive care unit that we had in the hospital. The administrator, shortly after I came back to town, asked if I'd be interested in doing it, and I thought to myself, if something happens to me, I really want someone to know how to take care of heart patients. So we got that started. Actually used a 4-bed ward in the old hospital, put monitors in there, and I did some good for the community with that.
Some of our physicians found Circleville and Berger together.
After I graduated from Creighton University, I went to the University of Iowa for family practice residency, and I found that the things that they had residents doing, first-year residents doing, were the things that I'd already done as a senior student at Creighton University, which was a little disappointing because it meant I spent a year not doing anything new, basically. That's where I met Dr. Gary Gillen, one of my partners throughout most of my career here in Circleville. And he talked about Circleville, Ohio, because he had been a student with Dr. Bill Myers here in Circleville when he was a senior medical student. So he spent a month that he lived at Dr. Myers' house, and he lived the same life that Dr. Myers lived for a month, you know. And he thought he was such a great person. He thought that Gary thought that maybe he and I could then come to Circleville and set up our own practice, because he assured me that Dr. Myers didn't want to have any partners and wanted to remain solo. Okay. But when we came to Circleville and talked to Dr. Myers, he said right away, I want both of you to come and join me. We actually started as our first official day was both Gary and I on July 15th, 1976.
Went to school at Ohio State, undergraduate and medical school. And my first connection with Circleville was during medical school. I was interested in doing a family medicine experience, and there weren't any people in family medicine at Ohio State at that time. But I got connected through my wife's family doctor with Dr. Bill Myers in Circleville. Came down here in October 1971 during Pumpkin Show. Spent the month of October with Dr. Myers and his family at his house, and experiencing family medicine from that level as an observer. After medical school, I went to the University of Iowa for residency, and after residency, Dr. Guerin and I were both at Iowa at the same time. He had gone to school in Creighton and Omaha, and we were both looking at the possibility of coming back to Ohio to practice, and among the places we looked was Dr. Myers' practice in Circleville.
Berger was the home to new medical techniques, programs, and technology for some physicians.
We were one of the first hospitals to do laparoscopic gallbladders and other laparoscopic procedures, hysterectomies. I used to do all of that. One of the first hospitals, yeah. And the reason I know is because the clip applier in those days came from a company that the salesman had the handle, and then you bought the clips. They didn't have enough of those, so he will go to Columbus hospitals and come here. That morning that we did our first case, Grant Hospital had tried to do one. They couldn't, but we were able to do it. So in essence, we were the first ones in the Central Ohio to do them.
Many firsts have been found here at Berger, with patient demand for different specialties increasing and medicine becoming broader and more specialized.
Well, I think being a woman and getting into medical school was made me proud, and I enjoyed coming home and being the first woman physician here. I didn't do it because I would be, just that's the way it worked out.
Our physicians worked for a much larger vision and helped bring Berger to where it is today, adding an intensive care unit.
Sometime during the first year of my practice, I had decided that I wasn't going to stay in Circleville, Ohio, at Berger Hospital unless we had an intensive care unit, because at that time we didn't. Everything we had was just chronic routine care, and anything that became serious was immediately sent up to Columbus. And so I set about trying to get a special care unit started again, because I think they'd had something in the past that had failed, and so anyhow, I talked to Gay Henson, a nurse RN that was on the nursing staff at that time, and she was gung-ho about getting a unit started. I went out then and talked to about a dozen different nurses over 3 or 4 counties, and I think we were able to recruit maybe 4 or 5 of them, plus a volunteer or 2 from the staff, to take classes on cardiac monitoring and that type of thing that I had to arrange through the Heart Association.
We got to start the first intensive care unit, Dr. Garrett and I, in the old building, using the old surgery suite. We got to experience being on call for the emergency room all the time. There weren't any emergency room doctors then. We all saw our own patients in the emergency room. There was a screen, it was a screen door in the back of the hospital that you went into through to get to the emergency room. We did OB for the first 10 years we were in town, so there were a lot of good experiences delivering babies.
Several physicians recognized their passion for health care from a very early age.
My parents said I was going to be a physician from the time I was born. They wanted a doctor in the family.
Well, I knew Berger Hospital when I was a child. In fact, my first experience at Berger was when I was a Girl Scout during the Second World War, and we were nurses' aides. And we made beds and cleaned instruments, and I was fascinated. I had already decided I wanted to be a doctor, and that just increased that desire.
Study of biology and not so much chemistry, but comparative anatomy and physiology and all those sciences made me start thinking about medicine because I so enjoyed those subjects. And then also I remembered my family physician, the doctor who delivered me, Dr. Schilke in Springfield, and what a great guy he was and everything like that, and that influenced me to go into medicine. You know.
It's something that I always thought about. I really couldn't think of anything else I wanted to do. So for me, there was no question of what I was going to do.
Many strong and professional relationships were made. These memories will live on in every past and present physician's mind.
Amazing physicians, I believe, in practice. When I first came to Circleville, the family physicians that I can remember were Jappy and Charlie Hedges, who you just interviewed. There was Bob McCoy and Francis Anderson. Francis Anderson used to do tonsillectomies on the staff. There was Ray Carroll, who's a family physician, and he often did anesthesia. There was Frank Moore. He was a crusty, old post-military doctor, I believe, but anyway, he had delivered 3,000 babies in Circleville. There's Mike Kirk that I mentioned to you a minute ago. Henry Swope, he's from Springfield, Ohio, by the way. He was a family physician here.
Dr. Lynn Christmer and Dr. Andy, got his last name, were internal medicine. Dr. Anderson was in the office on Northridge next to ours, Frank Anderson. Of course, the two Hedges were sharing our building at first. Within a couple of years, we remodeled the A&P store to office space for the three of us, and we moved over there in 1978. Dr. Bob Smith was general surgeon. Dr. Mashagi had just been here a year when I started. Dr. Lutz was doing OBGYN. There were several family doctors in town, Dr. Kirk and Dr. Moore.
I remember some of the physicians when I first came to town, and a few, obviously, Dr. Jasper and Charlie Hedges were very influential on me, and they taught me a lot, and they were very good to me. And there were a few other physicians in town. I remember Dr. Henry Swope. I really liked him a lot. He was my doctor when I was a little kid growing up, and he was getting older when I first came to town here, but I spent a lot of time talking to him, and I enjoyed some of his stories, and I was impressed that he and even my Dr. Hedges, my partners, that how they kept up on things and went for CME activities and were board certified in family practice and continued keeping up their education and keeping on top of the state of the art of medicine, and I think that they had a great influence on me.
Dr. Hedges, Dr. Swope, Dr. Moore, Dr. Smith, who was the first surgeon here, Dr. Alvarez, Dr. Excandi, And the rest of the doctors were almost all family physicians. Many of them did obstetrics.
And how do they want to be remembered?
We were here.
I guess one of the things that I'm most proud of is that I've been here for 35 years and I'm still in the same spot, and I still have a lot of patients who've been seeing me for that long.
On this Doctor's Day in 2015, I'd like to personally thank every physician in the Berger Health System for taking care of our patients here in Pickaway County.
The success of healthcare in Pickaway County and Berger is directly attributed to the dedicated healthcare professionals that served and are currently serving this community.